The day Sophie decided to break the rule was the day her world became something she could no longer trust. For as long as she could remember, there was one rule that governed society: do not look at the sky. It had been drilled into her from childhood, a simple directive repeated by parents, teachers, and every public service announcement on TV. Nobody explained why, nobody questioned it, you simply didn't look up. And for most of her life, Sophie hadn't cared to ask. The rule was just there, like gravity or time, unquestionable and universal. People went about their daily lives under a constantly overcast sky, their heads down, their eyes focused on the ground, on their work, on each other. The sky didn't matter because you were never supposed to see it. It became background noise, something so present yet so absent from their lives that most people probably forgot it existed at all. Until the day Sophie's curiosity finally got the better of her. It had been a normal morning. The train was packed and Sophie had squeezed herself into a corner seat, scrolling through her messages, ignoring the usual hum of the passengers around her. She had always been a rule follower, one of those people who didn't cause a fuss, didn't stand out. But today, something felt different. There was a nagging itch at the back of her mind, a sense that something wasn't right. She didn't know what compelled her to do it. Maybe boredom, maybe the unspoken rebellion that had been simmering beneath her surface for years. But as she stepped off the train and into the open air, she hesitated. Then she looked up. The sky was wrong. At first she couldn't comprehend what she was seeing. It wasn't the familiar blanket of clouds she had expected, nor the bright blue that sometimes sneaked through on rare, cloudless days. Instead, it was a series of grids, perfectly aligned lines stretching into infinity, as though the sky itself was a fabricated projection, a giant screen. Her heart pounded in her chest. What was she looking at? Was this a trick of the light, some kind of illusion? Sophie blinked, expecting the strange vision to disappear, but the grids remained. Even more unsettling was the realization that nobody around her seemed to notice. People continued walking, their eyes dutifully cast down, unaware or, more terrifyingly, uninterested in what was above them. A chill crawled up her spine. Something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. Her first instinct was to tell someone. She needed to talk about what she had seen, to confirm that she wasn't losing her mind. But as she opened her mouth to speak, she hesitated. There was a nagging voice in the back of her mind, one that warned her to keep quiet. She had broken the rule, and there were always consequences for breaking the rule. No one talked about what happened to those who disobeyed, but she had heard whispers, rumors of people who simply vanished. Sophie walked quickly, her head spinning, replaying the image of the artificial sky over and over. As the day wore on, she found it impossible to concentrate. She couldn't stop thinking about the grids. What were they hiding? Why had they been told never to look? When she got home that evening, Sophie locked her door and immediately turned on the news. It was the same as it always was. Endless reports about economics, politics, weather, though never any mention of the sky itself. No clues, no answers. But then, something strange happened. Her phone buzzed. A notification. You have violated the visual ordinance. Compliance is required. Sophie's heart sank. They knew. How could they know? Before she could process what was happening, her phone buzzed again, this time with an address. No message, no explanation, just an address. It was located in an area of the city she had never been to, a section that was generally avoided by most people. The warning in her gut grew louder, telling her not to go, to ignore it, to forget what she had seen. But the message was clear. Compliance was not optional. She had no choice. Sophie arrived at the address later that night, the streets eerily quiet. The building was a nondescript office tower, completely unmarked. She hesitated at the door, wondering if she should turn back, but something pulled her forward. Inside, the lobby was empty, the only sound coming from the faint hum of fluorescent lights overhead. A woman stood behind the front desk, her face expressionless. Your appointment is on the 5th floor, the woman said, without asking Sophie's name. She handed Sophie a plain key card and gestured toward the elevator. Sophie stepped inside, her heart racing, her mind swimming with unanswered questions. When the elevator doors opened, she found herself in a long hallway lined with doors, each one identical, except for a small number plate. Her destination was room 503. Taking a deep breath, Sophie swiped the key card and entered. Inside, the room was dark, except for a single chair in the center facing a blank wall. Sit, a voice commanded from somewhere in the shadows. Sophie obeyed, her legs trembling. As she sat down, the wall in front of her flickered to life. revealing a massive screen. The image on it was shocking. It was her, walking through the city, looking up at the sky. "We know what you saw," the voice continued. "You've seen behind the veil, and now you must make a choice." Sophie's breath caught in her throat. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice shaky. "There is a reason for the rule," the voice said calmly. "Humanity isn't ready for what lies beyond. The sky is a barrier, a necessary illusion. To maintain order, compliance must be absolute." She shook her head, trying to understand. "But why? What's behind it?" The voice paused for a moment before responding. "That is not for you to know. All that matters is that you obey." Sophie felt a cold wave of fear wash over her. "And if I don't?" The room fell silent. Then the voice spoke again, colder this time. "If you don't, you will disappear, just like all the others who questioned." The weight of the choice pressed down on her. Compliance or oblivion, silence or disappearance. In the end, there was no real choice at all. The next day, Sophie walked through the city like she always did, her eyes cast downward, never once glancing at the sky. The world had never seemed quieter.